Sound check. Sound check.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. You're gonna be the speaker today? Are you guys? Okay. Okay. What did you say? I T and then I CC'd you. Yeah, just Can you do like an intro song, like okay, but that one time that was yeah. That's so great, isn't it? Yeah, that's what it was last time. I was just trying a little high maintenance compared to your other speakers. Do you know what I mean? Trying to yell at me, but give those the day before, but yeah. That ain't happening. Not this time. But other this. Now that sounds nice. That's pretty loud, eh? Dave, what's going on? You a little something. It's great, eh? Yeah.
Attention. Wow. This is just a test. Do not adjust your settings. Can you all hear me? Wave if you can hear. I'll take that as a, oh, one person. Apparently you can see me, but not hear me. It looks like one of you waved your hand, so.
Hey, Travis, can you hear me? All right. Medicine Hat, can you hear me? Medicine Hat?
They're doing tests. They're checking for brain activity, and oh, okay.
Whoa, coffee.
Okay, we'll try again for Medicine Hat.
We saw you,
Yep.
David.
You should mute us again.
Yep.
You should mute us again.
Yep.
Like our
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I think, is this the first time Medicine Hat has been connected to us? Can we give Medicine Hat a big welcome? If their internet is actually working. So I'm going to introduce the speaker in a sec, but there's a couple of things I wanted to say. Number one, if you have not signed up to volunteer in Calgary for the Turkey Ham Jam, we're looking for bodies, and you're all bodies, so please sign up. That'd be great. The other thing I wanted to show you is, remember last week I showed you a picture of my fine decorating in my office? Leo, you want to show them the decorating in my office? No, well, this is what they did to my office. Keep going. That's my whiteboard under there. You can see that's going to be quite useful for the rest of the, next. Yeah, anyway, that's what my whole office looked like that. So I decorated, put my Grinch book up, and I was all excited and decorated, and they came into my office next day. And that's still up, but the entire, everything, every picture I have is gift wrapped on the wall. So here's the good news. I got video. I know who the people are that did it. And Camille, Mr. Sackrich, and others. So we're going to introduce Drew. Drew's going to come up and speak in just a sec. I just want you to know there is a guy that just puts it all together for us for the next few weeks, getting us through Christmas, and that's Drew. And so just give him a round of applause as he comes up and he shares.
All right, in true 1990s motivational speaking style, I had to have an intro song. I've always done that, so keeping up with the tradition. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I was a little surprised a couple weeks ago when Bill and Emily were like, Drew, would you want to speak on Christmas? I said yes. I usually do my annual speaking time at Faith Connect, usually in the new year, sometime around February or March. but I'm okay to kick it up a couple weeks early and do it now. So for the record, I have prepared. Okay, usually I just wing it usually, but I have prepared. And no, Camille, I am not speaking about what I always speak about. True story, for the last 5 years, I basically spoke about the same thing every time. So, you know, with new staff, sometimes it just goes unmissed, but yeah, some of us know exactly what Drew's like little repertoire is. So anyways, but to start us off, I do want to say that I hope my time with all of us is encouraging, inspiring, and that you guys are edified. I hope that the ideas I bring to the table right now will help us truly do our jobs better, help us find meaning and a Christ-centeredness as we move forward for the rest of the month. I will be speaking about things that do pertain significantly to Christmas. It'll be a bit of a come around point at the end, so bear with me. But this is about Christmas, believe it or not, and how we can find joy and love during the season, especially while working at the seed and working with our guests. So one of the things I wanted to start with was simply reading some Bible verses. I think it's great to listen to the word and to hear it spoken. So I've got 3 somewhat longer Bible verses I want to share with you guys. So just kind of settle yourselves. You can just relax, look out the window, whatever. But let's just listen to the word of God, and then I'm going to bring together some of these Bible verses here. So first one goes like this. On the 3rd day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. And both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does that have to do with us? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now there were 6 water stone pots set there for the Jewish customs of purification, containing 20 or 30 gallons each. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water." So they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw some out and take it to the head waiter." So they took it to him. When the head waiter tasted the water, which had become wine, and did not know where it had come from, but the servants knew, he called to the bridegroom and said, "Every man serves the good wine first, and when the people have drunk freely, then he serves the poorer wine. But you have kept the good wine until now." The beginning of his signs that Jesus had done, and this is the beginning of the signs that Jesus had done in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. So I guess Jesus and I have something in common. We like to party. All right. Just kidding. That was a bad joke. Okay. Next set of Bible verses. Here we go. When in the evening the disciples came to him and said, "The place is desolate, and the hour is already late. So send the crowds away so they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." But Jesus said to them, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat." They said to him, "We have here only 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, "Bring them to me." Ordering the people to sit down on the grass, he took the 5 loaves and 2 fish. He looked up towards heaven. He blessed the food, and breaking the loaves, he gave it to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And they all ate and were satisfied. They picked up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 full baskets. There were about 5,000 men who ate, besides the women and children. And the last set of verses, here we go. Then he poured water into the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel which he was girded. So he came to Simon Peter. He said to him, "Lord, do you wash my feet?" Jesus answered and said to him, "What I do, you do not realize now, but you will understand hereafter." Peter, he told him, "Never shall you wash my feet." Jesus answered him, "If I do not wash you, you have no part with me." Simon Peter said to him, "Lord, then wash not only my feet, but also my hands and my head." Jesus said to him, "He who has bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean, and you are clean. But not all of you," for he knew that the one who was going to betray him for this reason, he said, "Not all of you are clean." So when he washed their feet and taken their garments and reclined at the table again, he said to them, "Do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. And if I am the Lord and the teacher who washes your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I gave you an example that you also should do as I did for you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a slave is not greater than his master, nor is the one who is sent greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them." So those are just 3 verses that have a very common theme, in my opinion. And I love what Bill actually talked about last week, because the one verse that he spoke about with Mary and Martha, one of them doing all the work, the other one sitting at the feet of Jesus and just being in a relational, compassionate flow, while the other person was so busy and trying to figure out, how do I make this party work? And I'm doing all the work and I'm getting frustrated. And even in that verse, if you guys remember from Bill speaking last week, that Jesus basically said, you know, it's better just to relax and be in my presence and enjoy basically the fellowship instead of just working all day. And to me, the common thread or the common theme in all these verses, and a common thing that we do at the Mustard Seed really well, is hospitality. In the Bible, they talk about like servant leadership, right? And that's basically what Jesus was doing. He was a servant. He would go in and turn the water into wine, get the food for the people, whatever. But in this day and age, guys, like 2,000-ish years later, what that really is, in my opinion, is hospitality. And this is one of the things that we do in volunteer services well, because it's kind of one of the only things we can do well, as we're doing sort of everything on the side of all the hard programs. We can bring a lot of activities, hospitality, and the caring vibe through volunteer programs to our guests. Obviously, we're placing volunteers in the Wellness Center and high-level administration and all the rest of it. But one of the things that we can focus on as a team is doing really good hospitality for our clients. And this is something I've been reflecting on for quite some time, probably about 2 or 3 years now. And to me, the really profound thing about hospitality, in our society right now, there is an actual hospitality industry. It's restaurants and hotels and that whole thing. And be it you go to a hotel, be it you go to a restaurant, or be it you go to a friend's house, when you come in the door and someone's really good at hospitality, what are they going to say? They're going to say, come in and make yourself at home. Exactly. And what do we know about our guests? Many of them, most of them, do not have a home, right? What does it mean for someone to welcome them into a space, to simply give them, you know, a smile, to say good morning, you know, those little pleasantries, to look them in the eye even, right? To give them coffee, to give them a meal, to send them out with a meal from the shelter, to, you know, have them hang their coat somewhere, or, you know, easily get to their locker in the shelter, easily get to the clothing room, right? Make that as painless as possible. One of the things we know about our guests for sure, and this is obviously pretty obvious, is that many of them are disenfranchised, right? If most of your day you're walking around, and if you're panhandling or not, or loitering or whatever, you're going to be in a space that you feel very unwelcome, right? And it's no wonder they come to our doors kind of disgruntled all the time. What would that feel like to do most of your day, right? Like community engagement, you guys talk about this with the students over demo crew and stuff, right? Like, what would it feel like to spend a day or more, a week, a month, a year, feeling that sense of I'm not welcome anywhere? And then what would that feel like if you walked into our space and you were greeted appropriately, and you were given, you know, a sense of hospitality and a sense of servanthood, right? And this is one of the things I've been very passionate about. Even from when I was going to school, I learned about a really cool ministry in Taizé, which is in France. And so what ended up happening was they're actually like a Catholic ministry, and it was a monastery. And during World War II, all the refugees were fleeing the French area and fleeing the neighboring countries. And all these refugees ended up coming to the coast, and on the coast of, I guess it'd be the west of France, is Taizé. And for that reason, they had a lot of people come to them. But people talk about Taizé, it's like an open heaven. Like when you visit that space, there's a sense of freedom and spirituality that's quite profound. And Taizé based their entire ministry model on hospitality. Brother Roger, who was the guy who started Taizé, his whole mantra was, especially when the refugees were coming, he was saying, if we treat people like people, they'll act like people, right? And that was one of his main quotes, and they based the entire ministry off of hospitality. A couple other things they did that was really cool is they sang a lot of songs, they did a lot of cool musical chanting, and they kind of twisted the Catholic Christian flow into something a little more melodic, and it's really cool. You guys should look up Taizé on the internet. It's really neat. But the idea there was that thing of hospitality at the time, and if you'd ever heard him speak, and he's dead now, but you can find his stuff on YouTube, and he would say that when the refugees were coming, they weren't treated like people, right? They were treated like animals, essentially. And they were acting that way everywhere they were going, and they didn't have a home, right? They had nowhere to go. So when they came into Taizé, their whole thing was treat people like people, they'll act like people. Preface to that statement, however, we understand, guys, those of you who know, the shelter and street level can be very difficult work. If you don't know, you don't know. So don't assume. But those of us who have a glimpse into that world, sometimes simple hospitality and treating people like people at the door doesn't work. So to all my shelter staff and all the people front lines who are a little bit maybe like, okay, Drew, that sounds really romantic, but that ain't going to work, buddy. I get that. So this is more for our guests who kind of make it into our centers, who have passed through our checks and balances, and the ones that we're interacting with all the time. And obviously we have systems and programs that will work for people who are needing to sort of assimilate more with our culture and our flow here. But what I think we can do as an organization, one of the things we're focusing on even now as Christmas comes around, especially as what were Joseph, Mary, and Jesus doing? What were they looking for? They're looking for a place to sleep on, like the Christmas Day story, right? It's hospitality again, you guys. And to me, again, this is that piece. It's let's treat our guests with a sense of dignity. Let's show them hospitality. Let's do what Jesus said we should do, and let's believe in that. Those of you who know, we have a thing called Collaborative Kitchen that runs in the 1010, and it's actually coming to an end this month. Karen's been with us. Karen Vine has been a volunteer who's been running that program for about 4 years. It's our longest standing program or activity here in the 1010 building, and it's been always volunteer ran. We don't do anything about that with staff. The volunteers do everything. And it's really, really fun and really inspiring. And I was sharing these thoughts with Karen one day because ultimately that's what that program is. That program is sharing a sense of community around eating. Eating is such a profound way that us, humans can enjoy community and create community together and learn about each other and share emotionally and even physically and spiritually. So Karen and I were talking about all these things, and she said, Drew, believe it or not, I believe that hospitality starts at the dinner table. And because we talk a lot about, like, what are the effects of the nuclear family or the breakdown of the nuclear family with our guests, right? When you get to know them a little bit, you realize many of them had a pretty hard past with their families. Karen said, I want to take it a step further. It's not enough that people just stay together. It would be enough if you eat together, if you share that moment about food. And she kind of went off and shared all these ideas about that, and I don't really remember what she said, but I just remember in the moment thinking, yes, food is such a powerful tool to create relationships, even in the context of this thing that we hold so dear, which is the nuclear family. It's not enough just to like, okay, kids, there you go, see you later, turn on the YouTube, do whatever. Karen was like, I really encourage everyone to eat together, look at each other in the eyes, hold conversations, and come together in that flow. And again, I think that is reflected in the Bible. I believe it's reflected in what Jesus did with the disciples, the Last Supper, all these different things. So I want to give another example of a guest. Those of you who know me as the volunteer manager and running a team of creative individuals supporting the industry in programs, but not interacting with guests, I believe we have a very amazing privilege in this organization. My staff have heard me say this a million times. We are one of the only program teams that has true creative potential because we're not client focused. I often joke with the guests when so many guests ask me, dude, what do you actually do here? I'm like, oh, I manage the volunteers, because they don't see me doing anything. I'm like Agent Smith in The Matrix. I'm everyone and no one. They love that, and it feels like that sometimes. But the cool thing about it is that without getting into too much of the details and doing this respectively with the boundaries that we have, I end up creating relationships with the guests. And they're quite shallow in nature because I'm not reading their logs. I don't know what they're about. I got to be careful how I'm speaking to the people because it's like, I don't want to point you down the wrong direction. I don't know what you're dealing with Meryl at the shelter and Donna in advocacy and the volunteers over there and all that. So I'm kind of approaching this on more of a shallow way. But I do, because of that, and because I believe I'm kind of a safe space and some of my staff would feel the same way and the volunteers definitely feel this way, we hear a different narrative from the guests. We hear different sides of their relationships here and their story. And I've actually grown to know many of our guests quite well in kind of a friendship, aloof, shallow way, which I think is the right space to be in. And one of our guests, who's now been living with us for a little while, he had a very difficult life in a different city, moved here, got housed, went through the whole thing. Still quite maybe I can use the word fragile, but an individual who's being supported a lot and someone I've gotten to know. And he told me one of the things that really screwed him up when he came here at first was the way people would smile at him. In his world, a smile meant someone was about to take advantage of you. And so he hated smiles. He would come here for the first time, first couple of weeks, and street level would smile at him, shelter would smile at him. And people were interacting that way, and he was really on guard. And that kind of that was like, oh, crazy. I've actually never heard that before and in that way. But reflecting on some of my other relationships with the guests and hearing similar stories, I'm like, yeah, no, that would make sense. And but what he said was, in the long run, for him to recalibrate his culture and his character and his worldview and his environment, he realized he needed to start valuing smiling again. And then he started smiling at people, and that led to these hospitality moments that were happening. And many of us that aren't working frontline with the guests, and many of us that actually have time to be here in Faith Connect, right? It's like, how does this really relate to my day? How do I in finance and HR, in donor relations and donor stewardship or whatever, volunteer services, as an admin person, how do I actually do this? How am I connecting with the guests, and how am I living out this missional life just by doing this job, yet serving at the must seat? And we've heard it a million times, you guys, the pastors and everyone else coming here saying, like, you're serving the people who are serving, and therefore we're all part of this mechanism. But I would encourage you guys, simple pleasantries and simple acts of hospitality, things like smiling or a handshake or a good morning, go a long way with our guests, believe it or not. I believe that. I've seen my effect doing that to people. And yeah, I've been here for a while, and I might be hitting the same client year after year, month after month with this kind of cultural change for them. And that's fine. I know some of you might move on after months or years of working here. But know that you're a small piece in the giant puzzle, which is moving our guests forward in a different culture, in a different climate, in a different worldview. And I believe over time, those micro interactions will help change them. So I've been reflecting as well for a long time on what is the Mustard Seed's unique value proposition? What is our UVP? Could be the Wellness Center, right? Boris has brought to this organization something no other organization has, in the sense of the Wellness Center and the bill and the connectivity with all of our programs and us moving our clients through stages of change and moving them through processes into one of Calgary or Canada's largest housing situations with all the supports. That might be our unique value proposition. It might be something like, working with the church. We've grown out of the church ministry, and that might be a unique value proposition. It might be something like client-centeredness. We're really good at keeping the clients our center, and the peripherals, everything else, and we deal with that, but our clients are number one, and we're really like diving deep with them. But I believe our unique value proposition, to take a page out of Steve's book, is our Christ-centeredness. And I believe that that is most profoundly manifested through our need for our clients to come to us sober, believe it or not. I believe that our sober situation and our rules around sobriety and change are our unique value proposition. If we take all the themes and all the ideas around the Bible, and we narrow them down to essentially one thing, I believe what that one thing is, outside of holiness and hell and all the rest of it, and heaven and angels, whatever, I believe it's simply reconciliation and redemption, right? We're being reconciled back to God. And what does the Bible demand if you're going to be reconciled to God? Change. And unfortunately, these days, and now I'm on a rant, unfortunately, these days, changing is countercultural. Because what are we being, like, someone's got a freaking plunger and they're opening our brains and the whole society, the whole world is telling us, you don't need to change. You're good. You're good as you are. We just need to learn to accept people. And I don't believe in that at all, actually. And I don't believe our unique value proposition of Christ-centeredness and asking people to come sober and to put a stake in the ground of their life and make a difference, to become different, to change, right? I think that's very counterculture right now. And I think we have to be very delicate with that, obviously. We can't be judgmental. We have to be compassionate and understanding. And we need to be very, empathetic with these things. But I do believe at the bottom line, we need to demand redemption with our guests, through Christ or not. Maybe through their cultural experience, maybe through family experiences or lack thereof, maybe through the trauma and the drug use and the mental health and all that. But the moral of the story for me is change and redemption. And to me, this comes right back to the fundamental, come in, we will smile at you. We will welcome you. When you're through the door and you're in with us and you're understanding what's happening, we will take a little time to listen to you. I got like about 7 minutes here, so I'll make this real quick. My father-in-law was the chaplain at the Children's Hospital here for about 20 plus years. We were talking about the manifestations of compassion. And asking questions, you guys, is one of the most profound manifestations of compassion. Listening and asking questions, right? What do we do when we hear that someone says something that we don't like? Well, then let's talk politics for a second. Someone's like, yeah, I voted UCP. Then you're like, well, you're like that. That's a comment, man. That's not a question. That's not compassionate. You've just pigeonholed them into some sort of thing that you've just pointed on them, right? What would be better would to say, hey, a compassionate way would be like, oh, interesting. I didn't vote UCP. I voted for the Green Party. Like, what does that even, tell me what you mean by that. Or what was your value in that? That was a compassionate approach. On Facebook, let's change the comment to the question, right? Everyone's commenting. We're creating this like internet culture of just yelling at each other and just pigeonholing people with a comment. It's like, let's live compassionately, ask questions, and listen to each other. And then within the context of that, I believe the redemption and reconciliation can start to happen. Guys, we're on the front lines of these social movements, right? Don't second guess yourself. Each and every one of you has a profound ability and opportunity to impact people's lives who really need it, right? So that's basically the gist of what I wanted to share with you guys. We're really coming to the end of it. And I hope that the things I said to you kind of have inspired you. I hope that they've brought around some meaning to just the smaller intricacies of our work. Within the Christmas flow, we're moving into this right now. Most of this programming we've designed, and I believe Edmonton, Red Deer, Medicine Hat, and Kamloops are the same. Much of the programming around Christmas to allow donors and volunteers to come in is around hospitality. It's around things like food and caring and gift giving and everything that we all value. So let's remember this as we move on from here. Let's remember what it means to be people who are strongly hospitable and being servant leaders who are hospitable. And I believe we have leaders. Our leadership here at the Seed really is quite hospitable. We give each other, the time that we need to listen. Bill buys us food all the time. It goes a long way. You don't realize these small gestures, and let's allow those small gestures to affect us. So let's be gracious and let's be thankful for those things, and let's practice gratitude together. So in closing, round of applause for Leo. I am the worst speaker because I give everything like the minute before we get going. And Sean yells at me, which is great. It wasn't really a yelling, but it was like, dude, you should have done this a day ago. But Leo pulled it together. So I started at Christmas. I started in donor relations, working with Janice as a seasonal staff. I was volunteering at the time as well, playing music. And I met Rick Polterick, who was our old chaplain. And Rick was, for those of you that don't know him, was a professional singer, songwriter, actor. He had done voices on G.I. Joe and been in over 60 movies. And we learned music together and we played together a lot. And our tradition for the whole time that he was here for those 4 or 5 years or whatever is that we would play music together. And we learned this Johnny Cash song together over Christmas. And it was something we always played. And every time I play for the guests, which is like maybe once a month, I always end with this song. And so this is a song I want to sing with you guys. It's really easy. You'll learn it right away. And I hope that this can be our prayer. The lyrics are really great at like, I will stand firm in my faith. I hope that you are encouraged and invigorated to go forth from here and impact our guests in the world in a positive way. So let's sing this together and let's, maybe have a moment in your heart with God. Let's just reset and embrace this beautiful moment of reconciliation, okay? Glory, hallelujah, I shall not be moved. Anchored in Jehovah, I shall not be moved. I'm like a tree that's planted by the water. I shall not be moved. And in his love abiding, I shall not be moved. In him confiding, I shall not be moved. I'm like a tree that's planted by the water. I shall not be moved. Of course, it's really easy. It's just I shall not be moved in the same situation. And I shall not be moved. I shall not be moved. I'm like a tree that's planted by the water. I shall not be moved. Though all of hell assails me, I shall not be moved. Jesus will not fail me, I shall not be moved. Like a tree that's planted by the water, I shall not be moved. Let's go back to that chorus. Yeah. And I shall not be moved. I shall not be I shall not be moved. I'm like a tree that's planted by the water. I shall not be moved. And I'm like a tree, y'all. And I'm like a tree that's planted by the water. I shall not be moved. I'm like a tree. And I'm like a tree that's planted by the water. I shall not be moved. Amen, everybody. Have a great day. You are dismissed.